Hey, welcome back to How to Barbecue Right. I'm Malcolm Reed. Today, y'all, I'm cooking in my brand new smokehouse for the first time. I wish y'all were here to see it. Today, I'm gonna show y'all how I do some spare ribs that I wrap in butcher paper. Now, I like wrapping food in butcher paper because it makes that bark extra special. I get kind of that Texas style bark where you really get the spices on the outside. Doesn't get mushy from all that steam in the wrap. That's what I'm going for today. So let's see how they turn out. Let's get to cooking, y'all. So I got a couple of racks of St. Louis cut spare ribs. And of course, if you want to use baby back ribs or you wanted to use the whole spare ribs, you could do it. It's gonna change your cook time a little bit. So y'all know we cook to temperature, not time anyway, so just keep that in mind. Now, for these St. Louis cut ribs, we're gonna get a little binder on them first. And today, I'm just using some plain old yellow mustard. Of course, you could use whatever you want as a binder. I've used oil, I've used a little vinegar. The yellow mustard just kind of makes a tacky surface for the rub to stick to. And I like the yellow mustard because it lets me see where my rub's going. So if I missed any spots, the yellow will come through and I know to cover it up a little bit. So we're just gonna rub in a little light mustard on the back side of these ribs. And yes, I pulled the membrane off of them. Once we got a little mustard on them, I'm gonna go ahead and start seasoning them. First thing that I got going on is my hot rub. You could use whatever barbecue rub you wanted on ribs, but this gives it a nice little pop of color, gives it a little spice kick, and it's not too sweet. We're kind of keeping the sweetness down on these ribs a little bit. It's more in that Texas style of barbecue, but I'm not going crazy with it either. We're just putting a light coat, and y'all can see how it's kind of covering up that mustard a little bit. I'll pat it in some just to make sure it sticks. And then I'm gonna come back with a little more textured seasoning, a little coarser grind. That's my TX seasoning. It's got that coarse salt, coarse black pepper, a few little herbs in it, but it kind of gives you that Texas crunch. When I think of butcher paper, anything, I usually think of Texas because that's where I learned to do it at. And you can kind of see it puts a crust on it. And I like to take that and just gently press it in. Now we're gonna flip these ribs over. We're gonna do the exact same thing, but look how beautiful that is right there. You can see the different colors in the pepper, the salt, that hot rub behind it kind of shining through. And I like these spare ribs because they're meaty. I mean, I think a spare rib's kind of like a ribeye steak. It's got that fat, it's got that marbling in it. If you want a leaner cut, go with that baby back. So when I first started cooking ribs, we always wrapped them in full. That's just how we did it in comps. It really gets a rib tender because it's kind of steaming or braising it in its own liquid. It doesn't let anything out. But the butcher paper, when you wrap meat in it, like a brisket, ribs, pork butt even, it absorbs some of that moisture. It's kind of porous, so it lets a little smoke in, but it doesn't steam inside the butcher paper as bad. That's what gives you a better bark. Now let's go back with a little light coat of that hot rub for some color and for a little pop. I'm just patting it in a little bit, kind of helping that rub adhere to the mustard, to the meat. Then we're gonna come back with our crunchy layer, that super texture of that TX. But I love a good bark on barbecue, whether it's ribs, brisket, pork butt. To me, that's what it's all about. And as far as the sides go, I just kind of pick up a little of that seasoning from the board. I'm not gonna try to shake the sides down on these. These are eating ribs after all, so if I mess them up, it's okay. So at this point, I just want the ribs to sit here and hang out. They're gonna start sweating a little bit. That salt that's in the rub is gonna start pulling out some moisture and they're gonna kind of tack over. I'm gonna go outside, fire up my stick burner. I got my Outlaw pit up there. This is kind of an old school style. We're gonna put real smoke on them. Got a Royal Oak briquettes going in my firebox first. Put a few tumbleweeds underneath it. Let those coals get good and hot. Now when they burn down after about 15, 20 minutes, now it's time to start adding us a little of this hickory wood. I'm just gonna put one of these splits right on that hotbed of coals. This is gonna give us that heat we want. We're gonna start getting some of that smoke. So with this Outlaw, it likes to cook about 275, but what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna control the airflow on it today. We're just gonna burn a split about every hour, and I'm gonna try to hold it at that 225 to 250 range just by keeping the stack choked back a little bit and a little bit of air coming in the firebox. So y'all can see right now, I'm creeping up right on 225 and it's about perfect. I'm just gonna let it stabilize for about 10 or 15 more minutes. Let a little bit of smoke start coming out. We're gonna be ready to put those ribs on. Y'all like that new sign up there, don't you? Shell got me that one. Thank you, baby. All right, so we got that hickory smoke rolling on that stick burner. Now we're gonna take these ribs after they done sweat it in and put them right on a rack. I'm just gonna run them right in the middle. And when you put them on, make sure they're straight, because that's how they're gonna cook. You don't have to bunch them up or anything, but just lay them as straight as possible. But I just want them to take a smoke bath for now, so we're gonna shut this cooker up. Let that Outlaw do his thing. That's the easy part. So I'm gonna put together a little basic 3-ingredient barbecue mop. This is gonna add some moisture to those ribs, keep them from drying out while they're out there in the smoke. And it don't get much easier than this. I've got a bottle of Zesty Italian Dressing, and I always run it through a wire mesh strainer just because I don't need those chunks of that garlic and onion, peppers, and stuff that's in the Italian dressing. I want the flavors, just I don't want to add those chunks to the ribs. Then I filled the bottle up with water. We're gonna pour that right through the strainer too. Kind of dilute it down a little. And then all I'm gonna do is add some of that same rub we put on the ribs. That's that hot rub. Use whatever rub you season your ribs with. You need a couple tablespoons of it. I'm just eyeballing it. Pick up all that flavor from the rub and just stir it enough to where it dissolves. You don't have to heat it up. It's good to go like this. You can take it outside, set it by the pit. So I just got an old-fashioned barbecue mop I picked up at Kroger for a couple bucks. And we're gonna take it and just drizzle it. Now, they're starting to dry out a little. I just wanna keep some moisture on them. Not really trying to paint it on or anything. Just dab them. They're looking good. Keep it closed. Keep on smoking. Now, it's starting to smell like a smokehouse up in here, y'all. I'm gonna go ahead and give it another base stone. It's been about 45 minutes. We're getting that color right where we want it. Because after about 2.5 hours, that's when it's gonna be time for that butcher paper. Because we're getting the smoke on them, we're getting the color on them, we're getting that bark set, we're keeping them nice and juicy with this barbecue mop. I'm gonna close it up, and we still stay at about 250. That's where I want them. We might start letting it creep up just a little bit, because when I wrap them, I want it setting at 275, and that's where we're gonna finish them out. I burnt 2 splits of wood so far, that's it. So at about 2.5 hours, I'm taking another quick peek, because I know they're starting to get dark right where I want them. They look good. They still, you can see some of that fat starting to render out on top. They're not dry, but I want to make sure that when I touch them, that seasoning doesn't come off, and I'm still seeing just a little bit of it. See, I got a few bare spots on this right here. This one looks good all across the top. When I see them bare spots, all I do is hit it with just a little more rub. We're gonna cover those up, and then I'll drizzle just a little bit more of this baste over them just to add a little moisture there. Pretty now, man. We got a good bark going. I don't want to ruin it. I don't want them to get too dark, because they can. If you cook them the whole time straight on the rack, they're gonna be good, but they're gonna get that really, really dark look. And I kinda wanna keep that mahogany color going on these butcher paper ribs. So we sitting right where I want right now. 2 hours, 45 minutes into the cook. The pit's setting on 275 lined out. We're gonna take these ribs and put them in that butcher paper so we can get them good and tender now. That's the color I like. It's got that mahogany look to it. It's not too dark, but we can still see our seasonings. Beautiful on the backside as well. Clean up a little of those stalagmites or tights, whatever they call, but I'm gonna take them inside. This is how we're gonna wrap them in butcher paper. It really ain't no right or wrong way. First, I'm gonna go ahead, flip them over a little bit, pick off any of this little juice or marrow, whatever's come out of the end of those bones. I don't want that in my wrap. And then on this back side, we hadn't mopped it at all. So I didn't put anything on the meat side, but I am gonna go ahead and touch up with our little barbecue mop juice here. Not heavy, I don't want it pooling or anything, but I'm just gonna moisten up that backside a little bit. We will get some render and some juices coming out of these ribs while they're wrapped, but it's not gonna be near as much as it would be if we did them in full. So I'm just gonna take this butcher paper. What I like to do, bring it over, just so it goes down along the backside of that rib. Then you can just flip it over. And then what we do with this excess is just fold it right up underneath. They're not like super wrapped tight. Now when I'm cooking in butcher paper, I want them meat side up. Now in aluminum foil, I always go meat side down. We're trying to get them tender. They're wrapped up. They're getting nuked inside that tight, full package. When the butcher paper, I want it to breathe a little. I want the paper to absorb some moisture. I don't want to rinse off all that delicious seasoning we put on there. So I'm gonna leave them just like this. So we'll do the same thing to this other rack. Before I wrap these up, I'm gonna go ahead and stick a probe in it because I wanna know what they're doing inside. You don't have to probe ribs. I don't do it all the time. And I'm gonna set this alarm for about 202. It's gonna be a good temperature. Right now, I don't know if y'all can see it, but it's sitting on 172. It's right where you want them when you want to wrap them. So that's right at 3 hours, 2 hours, 45 minutes. For some reason, when you wrap them, it always goes down a few degrees. Like we dropped to 168, it was 172. I've seen it drop in full 10, 15 degrees, then it'll bounce back, but it's not gonna drop much further than that. We just need to let these dudes cook. Make sure we have plenty of fire. I probably got another 20 minutes or so, 30 minutes maybe on that piece of wood. It's a pretty good size split. See how my coal bed's done? I'm just working with a little coals and the split burning. So if you didn't probe them, you're gonna have to come back and check them. I know it's gonna take about at least an hour and 15 minutes. That's where I would be checking them. If I'm running 275, sometimes it's an hour 30, sometimes it's longer. I've learned over the years, if you want to be precise, use that probe. The internal temperature does not lie, and it saves you from losing heat by opening up the pit, unwrapping the ribs and filling on them. All right, once that dot goes off, I know these ribs are 202 internal, right where we probed them. But you can always pick them up and kind of feel a little bit. If they feel loose, like they're fixing to droop, I know they gotta be done. But what I'm gonna do is rest them, just like I do everything that comes off. I'm gonna drop them down in one of my little rib coolers. Let these ribs hang out. They need about 45 minutes to an hour. Every 15 minutes, I'll come back, burp them, let some of that steam out. I don't want to cook them anymore. I just want them to hang out and calm down. All right, this is the moment of truth right here. I let these ribs hang out. We still got some steam built up in them, even after burping them, so you know they still warm. Let's just see. See how that paper's got all that grease? That's what I wanted. I didn't want it in the foil. I wanted it in the paper. You can use that paper for fire starters. It's soaked up all that grease. If you just throw it over in a bucket when you get ready to start your fire, it will go. It's soaked up all that meat juice. Still got all that bark on the outside because of the way we cooked the meat up in there. Now they are tender. I'm supporting them pretty good. They're wiggly, but I guarantee you they're gonna be just right texture-wise. This is what I wanted to see. I wanted that bark preserved on these ribs. I want them to have that kind of that Texas-style barbecue look from wrapping meat in butcher paper. Let's cut them up. Y'all know the most important part of the day is trying them, right? It's easier to me to cut them when I flip them over and cut them from the backside. You can kind of feel that bone there, tell where you need to line your knife up. Got that smoke ring on them. You can see how that hickory wood did. Bark from the rubs we put on top, that TX layered over with that salt and pepper. Good thing about them, I mean, it's really a dry rib. Eating them this way, and you can serve them with sauce. I got me a little bowl. I'm finna pour me up some, but I gotta go in and try that bite. Juicy, smoky, got a little bit of a spicy pop, but not hot. Take some of my vinegar sauce, serve it on the side, y'all. The vinegar sauce, regular sauce, whatever sauce you like. I'm gonna pull some of this meat off this bone. It ain't falling off, but it's hanging on. And I'm gonna do some dabbing. You don't have to glaze that rib every time. You taste the spices, taste the smoke, taste the meat, and then serve your sauce as a little dip. Oh, that's so good. So butcher paper is not just for brisket. You can wrap ribs with it. You can even do pork butts with it. If you like that bark, you like tasting those spices on there, and you like getting a good little pop, dry style Texas rib, sauce optional on the side, this one's for you. Hey, appreciate y'all hanging out with me here at the Smokehouse. If y'all like what we're doing, subscribe to that channel. We'll be putting out more content from right here. Shell and I'll be talking about this rib recipe, all the other fun stuff we're doing on our weekly podcast. Y'all give that a listen. Shell, you're gonna be there, right? And then y'all can find us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. Y'all know the drill. We'll see y'all next time. Textbook, butcher paper, dabbing ribs.